Welcome to the Polymaticast, episode 4 for November 6, 2016. Today's topic, using libraries and packet managers with your code.
Hi, I'm John.
I'm Alan.
So, for the Microsoft environment, what kind of stuff is there out there?
There's really kind of two types, and primarily when we're talking about development, it's NuGet. And in more current iterations, we'll talk about more specifically, but there's also some pretty good overlap with a lot of non-Microsoft package managers, that revolve around JavaScript. And then also, in an effort, there are people who wanted to kind of improve installation process in a more magical way, like a lot of package managers or installers are available in the Linux world, and there's a thing called Chocolatey. Yeah, I think it's chocolatey.org.
Chocolatey and nougat. That kind of sounds kind of sweet.
Yeah.
How do you spell nougat?
It does. It's Nuget.
So not like the candy.
Like nougat without a second G.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's not like the candy bar or actually nougat I think is spelled N-O-U.
Yeah.
G-A-T. So it's completely spelled differently, but it's NuGet as in N-U get.
I think some people over there have a sugar overdose.
Nuke is actually pretty good mechanism, and we could talk about it in depth if you really care. But yeah, in the Microsoft world, primarily for developers, it's NuGet. And then as developers too, you want to install a lot of stuff, or if you're a sysadmin person, Chocolatey is actually really useful. Is sort of a way for you to roll up installs, and you can just hit them from a command line, and that's really easy to automate installs and OS builds. I know a lot of people who use something like Chocolatey in the server builds. So when the server build and the image comes online, they'll execute off a Chocolatey package, which will then pull all the pieces it wants into the system and then does the installs. So it's pretty neat.
For NuGet, how does it manage the packages? Is it like a single text file that contains everything, or a JSON file or something?
So with NuGet and typically with Visual Studio, you can create your own NuGet packages for anything. It could be JavaScript. It can be binaries, right? There are people who have rolled up jQuery NuGets and Bootstrap NuGets. And so what you do is you submit them to a public server, NuGet.org, I believe. There's a whole gallery of stuff there, and that stuff can get pulled down from a NuGet feed, which is basically like a JSON feed or an XML feed. And you can also, internally, you can also build your own NuGet servers pretty easily. So if you're you have a development team and you're all using one common library, you can create a NuGet package, put that on an internal NuGet server or computer, basically, and everyone can add that feed into their Visual Studio, their IDE, basically. And they can go do the searching against NuGet publicly or privately.
Do they store the package information, like versions and stuff? Do they store that in the Visual
Mm-hmm.
Studio project, or in a separate file or something?
So the NuGet is basically a zip file. In fact, if you'll find out a lot of most of these packages they're basically zip files. I mean, APKs, right, for installs for Android are basically they're zip files with encrypted content, right?
Yeah, I meant more the project itself. So in your project, you have dependencies on certain libraries and packages. So where does it store that information? Is it like inside your project, or is it like a file inside your project or something? How does it do that?
So what I was getting to is in the NuGet package, if you were to pull one of those roll down, you see it's a zip file, and then there's a bunch of little spec files. And the new spec is basically the thing that says, okay, hey, I have dependencies on these DLLs, these versions. Here's the metadata about the author and the information. And you specify a version number for that NuGet package. And that stuff is what gets read on the fly, and that's how you can maintain dependencies. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, so that works between developers. So you commit something, and then the other person pulls it down, installs the packages, and they can continue working with your version, right?
Yep. And the other thing you can do, so at work, what I did is I have these sort of common tools that I was carrying across projects, and I was just literally carrying the physical files across, copying putting that into a folder and then, making reference to that. And then eventually we modernize that work, and we have an internal build server, and it can also produce a NuGet feed for a certain branch. And so that we contribute to that, and we're part of that feed. So as long as we contribute the new spec, it's been configured in such a way that we just compile, we build, and then it's available instantaneously in our feed. So inside Visual Studio, because it works with NuGet, you can go ahead and browse, and you pick the internal feed off your list, and you go ahead and you find your package and your tool. So if I make an update, if I add a new dependency, and I define these things in the metadata, when I've submitted or recompiled the internal package, Visual Studio is smart enough to go check to see if there's any version differences. And if there is, it will give you prompting if you're under the NuGet area. And it will say, hey, do you want to install the latest version or roll back to an older version? So there's a lot of automation that's been built into Visual Studio. I know there are other Microsoft compatible IDEs that are utilizing NuGet. But NuGet itself is it's basically like in the Linux world, there's make and build, and then that's basically the install process, right?
So if you look at the Linux world, well, it kind of depends on your language, right? But for if you're actually looking at installers like Chocolatey is doing, you're looking at something for Debian, you'd look at something like apt-get, right? And for Red Hat, that would be Yum. There's all sorts of package manager for that. But as for languages, for PHP, for example, there's Composer, which basically just, allows you to install the libraries. And on your Mac, for example, there's Brew, which allows you to install packages like separate versions of PHP, or like a certain zip tool, or whatever you want. Basically, a missing package installer for OS X. Right. As for Linux, well, everything is already available through apt, so you don't really need that. But for languages like PHP, there's Composer. For JS, there's Bower. Node, there's Node Package Manager. And for Python, there's pip. And so, yeah, there's this thing. If we had Composer 10 years ago in the project, some of the projects at work, that would have been so awesome. But this is something it's only been going on for not that long, but it's made our lives a lot easier.
Yeah. So the advantage of NuGet is it's mostly interested about where it's installing stuff and how it's installing stuff. It is less concerned about platform. So the advantage for that is, in the Microsoft world, there are these things called portable class libraries, and these things are more cross OS. They're not dependent on your version of an OS, meaning if you want to create a library in the Microsoft world that is available on iOS devices, Mac, and also on Windows stuff, you would create what we call PCL, a portable class library. And in the Windows world, you typically would create a dynamic link library, or DLL. And those things are binaries that work in the Windows world on Windows compiled things. So NuGet doesn't really care. It doesn't care about the contents because, like I said, people have rolled together, hey, here's my default template of how to build a PHP website. Boom. And you could create a NuGet package for that, and your development team could download the NuGet package, and it would set up the folders, all the stuff, all the defaults, all the things that you wanted, including configuration files if you needed, which could include other references to like NPM or Bower, right?
Yeah. So NuGet is more like an overarching thing.
Yeah, and so there is one company, at least one company, that has built a installation process. So at work, we go through a build server, and the build server has a deployment mechanism that we use that does a lot of wonderful things for us. But one of the primary things it does is it does the deployment out to the web server and wherever else we needed to in the stage and in the steps fashion that we needed to do. And it uses NuGet. It basically takes the thing, wraps it up into a version of NuGet file for that specific ID, sends it over to the physical box, installs it, and then does some magic with our web server, and boom, it's instantly just updated without disrupting the users. And if we want to roll back to any version, we can, because we have these self-contained packages that represent basically the full install of the site. And so people have figured out that NuGet's really good for that and use it like an installer. Chocolatey doesn't use NuGet whatsoever to do its installs. It uses basically PowerShell calls, basically scripting calls to do its hard work. But NuGet is less concerned about the platform, so you can download the things that are only good for iOS on a Mac, or you could download the Windows stuff on a Mac if you really choose to do that. Yeah, so I don't know if that helps kind of qualify. It makes the process inside Visual Studio much easier and much more magical.
Well, the same thing for of course, Composer. If you look at PHP Storm, which is an IDE we use for, it's basically, it's IntelliJ from the same company. And you have integrations with Composer. You can update Composer from in there, and it's really, really, really handy because you're no longer just downloading the package, installing the package, and then figure out that in like 6 months there's a new version and you have to install it manually, and then figure out that there's a compatibility issues and you need to install even more updates. And I've been there. I've done that. I've been doing that for, well, I haven't been doing that in a while, but I have done that in the past, and it's kind of painful. So it saves you a lot of time developing each package, right? So you can develop your own packages, and you can depend on other people's packages. You know the dependencies between the versions. People that test their own stuff against other libraries. That's pretty nice. You don't have to juggle packages. It's easy to install stuff, and you can have the same version between developers, right? So I can do something, and then my colleague will get the version when he gets the merge. But there's a big problem with these kind of package managers, and that is the upstream. So recently we had some trouble with DDoS attacks, and GitHub went down. Well, it was not down, it was just not available to anybody in the EU. And that causes some trouble, especially when you're trying to deploy stuff and your deploy fails because the package is no longer available. So, for example, if you do something, you can deploy with Ansible, which is a scripting language for deploying your code to a server. No, it's being used for all sorts of stuff, but that's what we use it for. But one of the steps in our thing is we install the latest version from Composer, right? We install the latest Composer version, and we download all the packages from our composer.json, and they get installed in the vendor directory, and then everything automatically works. The problem is when GitHub goes down and none of the packages are available for download, or packages, the thing behind Composer is down. It causes a lot of trouble. So there are several ways how you can mitigate this problem. You can make a proxy service that does this for you. And one of them for Composer is called Torrent Proxy. It allows you to save the cached copy of your version of that code, and automatically updates the packages you use often. But is there something like that for NuGet?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of things you can do. You can offline and cache things pretty easily. So if you're concerned, usually when you install Visual Studio, Microsoft keeps an external cache of a lot of stuff. In fact, NuGet came out with a team of people who built this, and then eventually merged in with Microsoft because Microsoft really loves what they were doing. And so Microsoft keeps on a completely different site, an offline site version, than you have NuGet.org. And then in the case of something like internal, you can easily roll up NuGet servers easily internally into the company. And one of the things that happens is when you go ahead and you install a package, there's typically part of your folder with all your projects, and part of your solution, there is a packages folder and a packages.config. And all this stuff contains basically an offline version of that. So if someone is missing a copy for some reason, all you have to do is literally take that package and copy it into the packages folder, let's say on the server, or where the build server is. In our case of our build server, it will go and check the feed first. If it's an internal NuGet server, of course, there's only one feed for it. And it will try to resolve to whichever. If it has the package locally, it'll use that. If there's a problem there, it'll go out and it'll reach out to NuGet or wherever the feed server is and pull it down. So if the feed server is offline, it'll use whatever's local, or it will just won't build. Simple as that. Simple as that.
Is it like a mirror? Like, is it actually a mirror, or are you just the one that was recently downloaded? So if, for example, you make a version where you change something, you get a new version of the package, you put that up to the build server, and while you push it to the build server, the upstream server goes down, it can't get the package. How does it handle that?
Yeah, so in our case, our build server is also providing a NuGet feed, so it's almost like a non-issue right there, right? There's no up and downstream problem because it's present, it's the same thing. You can do that. You could totally give it a whole new feed, but internally, there's a set of projects in our source control that's related to a NuGet feed, so all things that get built there get built by the server. So ahead of time, yes, those things have to be built. They have to build well, and usually you do most of your resolution at the IDE level, the development tool level. You go ahead and you pull the things down locally, and when you commit that folder. You don't have to commit that folder along with it. But if you want whatever version you were coding with to be the thing that it gets supplemented, you commit your packages folder, and the build server will use that. In cases where it can't find it, it will try to reach out directly to the feed servers. So usually what you do is the best practice is to commit the updated packages folder.
Won't that be like,
so that it handles the cache first? And if you don't want that, then just remove it from the SVN site.
Won't that
and
be like,
when the person comes along on your team and downloads first time, the first thing it's going to do is go to the NuGet feed server first. So if it's down, then it won't compile.
Won't that be like a conflict hell? Like you commit the packages. Won't that like cause you lots of trouble?
Oh yeah, sure, it can be. And so what I typically do for the team is I don't commit any of the packages folder. I let it get natural out of the feed. If I have to resolve with somebody, they want to compile locally. I can give them a copy of the packages that I have that's clean on my system. But most of the time, you don't want to do that, right? You have an empty packages folder, and the packages config file is what you keep up there. And the build server will resolve everything. So in cases where if it's reaching out, one of the popular things with web packages, web apps generally is there's a company called Newtonsoft, and they made something called JSON.net. And I use it a lot. It's great. Lets me do JSON with .NET stuff. And most packages that are web packages in the Microsoft world are all dependent on JSON.net because it does a lot of magical things. So if the NuGet server is down, well then yes, you're SOL basically. Yeah, just like you would when you're talking about it when you guys go out to GitHub. Now the other thing you can do is if you're doing JavaScript stuff in the Microsoft world, in Visual Studio, they have extensions. Extensions are for the IDE. NuGet is for the projects that you create. So the extensions, there is one by one of the guys who works at Microsoft, builds all kinds of awesome extensions. And one of the extensions he created was something called a client-side library extension. And he just keeps a feed for himself of all the latest versions, the GitHub and the CDNs. So what happens is when you're trying to compile, if it can't reach out to GitHub, it will go to the CDN. And it will pull down the minified or the non-minified version, and will resolve it for you. And you can choose, what do you want? Do you want the minified, the non-minified, and it gives you a little search engine for that. So you can go in and find your Bootstrap plugin and see everyone's variation of a Bootstrap alert plugin.
Would you ever want to go back to a situation where you didn't have a package manager?
Sure. I mean, I did it for years prior. You go out to the GitHub site, you download, you look at the source code, you compile it locally, boom. But the package manager makes it easier. The one thing that's really nice is when you can build your own internal, NuGets, right? So not all the developers in the company have access to all branches or repos in the SVN or Git systems. And I'll be honest, there's a bunch of developers from other divisions. I don't want to be able to look at how I did my something in my thing, because what happens is they copy your code, scratch your name out, and then claim a win on their side of the house. And it's not really so much competitive stuff. Is then what they end up do is they end up dirtying up your code, or they contribute dirtying up your code, and now you have to offline a good clean copy before you contribute it into the system. But if I want to share it with them so they can use it, but not to muck up my code, I can provide them the link to the feed on the internal NuGet. And so I can make the package updates universally, and anybody who is going to go recompile is going to get those latest updates. So if I need to do a bug fix, I do it in one place. I commit it, I build it, I check it. It's available in the feed instantaneously. So anyone who goes down through the next build round, NuGet will go and say, hey, do you want to update this? There's some changes, right? And so we build it into our build and deployment system, right? And so it really kind of is powerful from that perspective. Where in the past you'd have to sort of, email, put it on a file share, hope that people will grab the latest copy.
Pass the USB stick.
Yeah.
Do you have the floppy for me?
Sneaker mail. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, but the disadvantage there is, at a higher level strategically, you have to get everyone on the same page. And I'm sure you are as aware as I am. There's plenty of people who don't want to change for the sake of change. Right. And so they'll be rolling out there with a version and have a big old security hole that they never fixed and you fixed, 2 years ago. And they don't want to take your version because your version is different than their version and they don't understand the differences. And they don't have time to resolve the differences.
Or even worse,
yeah.
They don't want to change it because then your name is on it, right? Because you contributed something and it's not theirs.
Yeah. So I mean, just to kind of defeat all that, if you have a good working environment, it's almost a non-issue. They can say, oh, you built a thing. Oh, I'd love to use that thing. How do you get that thing? Oh, add the NuGet feed, and here's the ID. Oh, great. Thank you, Alan. Done. And so when I contribute the change or the fix, it's contributing to everybody at the same time. The only thing as a developer you have to be aware of, and this is everywhere, for anything you do, is you have to make sure that if you are going to change something that's going to break other people, that, you consider the weight of that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I take it that NuGet has versioning, so it has a version number on it, right? So that's the easy way, right?
Yeah, and our build server does too. So you can, in Visual Studio, you can go in and say install whatever version. So if you have a compatibility problem, you can roll back.
So for Composer, there's a composer.json, and inside the composer.json, there is a version number, which has an operator in front of it. So you can say, for example, anything higher than or equal to or within this version, version number. And then there is a composer.lock file, which contains all the current installed versions. And you basically install you commit both the composer.json and composer.lock file. And that makes sure that anything that you commit, the other person that gets that commit later on has the same version. So there's a number with which you can update to the latest version so nothing breaks, or the exact version. And the exact version is anything that gets installed on production as well. So the lock file locks down your version between the installs. So you have the same version everywhere.
Yeah, and NuGet has a lot of that stuff in the new specs that provides a lot of that same kind of stuff, the minimum versions, right, of compatibility. Yeah. in the .NET universe inside Microsoft, there are different frameworks, and the frameworks can run side by side, meaning you can have 2.0, 3.5, 4.0, 4.5, 5, 6, and 7 together, and it doesn't really matter on your server or your operating system. And so you can specify the targets also in NuGet, saying that this package is only targeted for, version 5.0 of .NET. So, there's a lot of that information and extensibility that's built into the package automatically. And then in our case, at work, it goes into with the rest of our deployment system. So we can also give it indicators like these are the packages we're dependent on. But what you mostly do is in the solution that you create for your code projects is you put all this information in your new spec that's related to your project. You can say, here are my package dependencies, here are the IDs, here are the minimum versions. And then the build server kind of just handles and orchestrates all of that.
Okay. Well, I think we covered the whole package manager stuff
to death. They're good. There's a couple. In the JavaScript world, there's Bower and there's npm.
Yeah.
And so you can employ those in Visual Studio. We really should probably talk about IDs at some point later down the line of the different sort of development environments, available to kind of OS. But a lot of the magic gets coordinated or orchestrated for at least me, depending on your flavor of Visual Studio or development environment. Utilize the open source projects like NuGet.
Okay, well, we have some other topics as well. I recently saw a live event right before I went to see Doctor Strange. And the live event was the MacBook Pro release. I'm a developer, and I usually use MacBooks for my development stuff. Rarely do I ever use a Windows machine for anything, except for gaming. But the MacBook Pro is kind of no longer a developer thing, because it's.
Why do you say that? What was it good about for development?
Well, first of all, it had a physical escape key, which is very, very, very handy if you're doing anything Linux related, like VI or doing anything on a Linux machine. The function keys are very handy for stuff like for editors, and the memory maximum is 16 gigs. And as a developer, I kind of want more than 16 gigs because I'm running virtual machines, like 5 or 6 of them. And I want to be able to run them and not have any slowdowns. It's a bit of a mess right now. And there was some, the keys have changed. Now I use a MacBook. I have a MacBook 2015. That is the small one, the thin one. It's okay. I use it for some development for my personal stuff, but I wouldn't want to use this for my work. The keys are very you like some sensitivity, some tactile feedback while typing, right? And the keys for the MacBook 2015 and 2016 are the butterfly keys. And they have like 1 or 2 millimeters of travel, which is very, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't. I can code on this for a couple of hours, and then I'll have pain in my fingers. I don't know if that's related, and I do this on another machine which has more travel in the keys while I actually feel the keys, right? And that works. It might have been, it's new, damn new things. I don't want them. No, that's not it.
Grumpy old guy.
I've been working on a MacBook, right? I know what it feels like, and I have been doing this for like a while. But now you have four USB-C attachments, right? Plugs. But you need dongles for everything. It's great that you can charge on all of them. That's great. But the problem is, I would need to, if I want to plug in a mouse, I need a dongle for that. There are no USB-C mice already, right? And in the past, the MacBook is like the best developer for developer laptop you can get, right, for Linux stuff or web development stuff. At least in the open source area, right? Not the Microsoft area. But
Well, so if you were to go back, I don't know, let's say you go back 15 years, people would be complaining about, I want a wire for my network. I don't like this wireless stuff. It's not fast enough. It's not good enough. It's not this enough. And now what do? We roll around with Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi has gotten better. It's never going to be fast as a hard line. But it can get pretty good, and the technology is getting a lot better. And now the freedom of you rolling around, right? Originally, wireless mice were not so great. They got better. Then they took the ball out and they put lasers in, and it got better. And so I think, part of Microsoft's thing is if you want a different keyboard or if you want a different mouse, they're probably the first response is buy our wireless solution. And I will tell you, I have like a little recording studio here. And I come down here only really once or twice a week. And I'm not here that long. And then I don't really think about the mess of wires and stuff that are around here. And recent days, I'm like, I should really just kind of make this whole area clean. Like, there's no reason I can't cable manage this stuff really well. However, considering what I do here, I would never trust a wireless mic to be the way for us to have a conversation. Yeah. I want everything a physical wire. But the thing is, going from a wired world to a less wired world is probably their thinking, right? They think that you can do just fine with a Bluetooth keyboard and a Bluetooth wireless mouse. So for cases like that, I agree with you. Yes, you need a dongle to a thing and whatever. I think what most people are probably going to do is they're going to buy one device that provides all the connectors they need, and it's going to be this tiny little block that hangs off their USB
they're already
Type-C.
there. That happened with the MacBook, but the MacBook only has one USB-C. This has 4, which is okay. I can live with that. I can live with the dongles. The thing I can't live without is the amount of memory. They haven't updated that in years. Right? So 16 gigs has been the limit for years, and the things that they changed with the keyboard. Right, so they don't have like a version without that strip that is at the same technical specs as the other ones, right? So there is a lower end one which doesn't have the keyboard changes, but it does also have the lower travel keys, but it doesn't have the light bar or whatever the thing is called.
So how do you feel about that?
The light bar?
Yeah.
Well, I don't like it. I like the security thing with the fingerprint sensor. I like that.
Yeah.
But I don't like the fact that it doesn't travel, so I can't push the power button anymore, right? If my machine freezes, which it does when I try to build something on Arduino or something, sometimes it crashes and it takes my entire machine with it. I can't power it off because there is no physical power button, right? Which is going to be an issue. And
yeah, I think that would be a problem.
And if I use VI or something, which I do a lot because I'm logging into servers over SSH, I can't press the escape button. It doesn't give me feedback, right? If it would have like force feedback, the force touch thing, that would have been great, and then at least I feel something like something is happening. But sometimes you have to, in VI, for example, you have to press escape colon and then some commands, right, to get to the command prompt. And there are some people that said, you can map that to caps lock, but that's something I don't really want to do. I just want a full keyboard. Give me the full keyboard. Oh well.
I mean, I guess it wouldn't be as portable, but you could find like a Bluetooth keyboard or something of your choosing that has the things that you want. But I mean, why would you want to do that on a laptop if you're in a Starbucks? You're not likely to pull out your PC, plug it into the wall, pull an LCD monitor and construct that onto a table.
That'd be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my grip for this week for the whole thing, for MacBook related. Um,
I think the touch bar is a neat idea.
yeah,
I think in places where like Adobe is going to,
definitely.
utilize an Illustrator and stuff like that, and I think that's going to be neat. I know that they were demoing off in iMovie and Final Cut. There's a the editing strip, and that's neat. But normally, when you're editing, and it definitely if you're professionally editing, you typically have some external device that does jog and shuttle stuff for you, and you would never want to have to move your hand, you know, a foot away, not because you're being lazy, but because it's much more proficient to be using two hands and having to move. You don't have a third hand to go do your little swipey thing. It's easier for you to just go lean to the right or left and go grab the mouse. So I don't know. I mean, it's a thing that people are going to have to program for. And yeah,
But most of the time, you got like an external monitor attached to it anyway.
sure,
So,
yeah.
right. So your keyboard on your laptop is usually not something you work with. So if they make this like the keyboard with a display in it and put it like a separate device that you can buy with like the
Hmm.
display on top of it, that would have been awesome. Right? Or maybe the bar on top of the keys, and maybe not making such a big touchpad at the bottom. Because the thing is
Yeah,
huge.
yeah, I saw that was huge. The one that's on my laptop is large enough. It's not, half the chin of my keyboard area on my laptop, but it's big enough. I don't need to be bigger. I don't need to be smaller, but I don't need it to be bigger. I don't understand the point of that. Maybe it has more to do with gestures,
Yeah.
because I know, Mac OS or whatever flavor it's being called today is heavily geared for that. But I'm not conditioned to using gestures. I think they most of the time for me they get in the way.
I,
Um,
I just wish that Apple would get on board with Wacom or something and make something that would be um, like make a tablet, but a tablet with a good pen on it, right? A screen with a pen with full OS X that can run Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint and all the art stuff. That would be awesome. But they're not gonna
so
do that.
so what you're saying is you want the Microsoft Surface to be able to run Mac OS.
Yeah, the Surface Pen is not for me. I've tried it. It's not good.
Oh, you don't like it?
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Uh,
I might be a Wacom fanboy for that.
okay.
Some other stuff that happened was a 3D printer explosion. What turned out to be not a 3D printer explosion, but a flash paper explosion. So Barnacules Nerdgasm made a good video about what actually happened. You can find that video at polymatic.link/p. But basically, a newspaper said that a 3D printer exploded in the title. And when you actually read the article, it said, well, it was the flash paper and 3 cans of hairspray, and then something set it off. I'm like, you're in a small room, 3 cans of hairspray and flash paper? You're just asking for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I saw that and I thought, well, that's something I need to share, so that was it, I guess. Yeah.
Of the check that out. I mean, nothing comes down to having some responsibility, right? Don't
Yeah,
do stupid things. If the device is going to be running for hours unattended, not so no one's babysitting it, and it's going to run, and these things do get hot. Heat is applied. It's how your
yeah,
3D prints work.
but a kid got killed. A 17-year-old kid who was doing the hairspraying got killed, and that's sad, but,
Yeah, at some point you have to have some caution. I don't know about in your car. It used to be worse, but typically what you used to get is you would pull down the what is it, the sun divider or whatever blocker that most cars have. Well, all cars really have. And you would pull it down in the 90s, right? Even the early 2000s, they would have this big warning, ugly message thing. A whole bunch of warning messages of when you put this divider down, what not to do, and and a lot of it is common sense. And I get the first time someone sees that, they go, "Oh, that makes sense. Okay, duly noted." But then there's like people who, in a Starbucks and they spill coffee on themselves, and then now they want to sue Starbucks. It's hot coffee. Like, don't you understand some general concept of fire? So, I mean, at some point, responsibility has to be put back on the people. And so, it sounds like to me the news headline was there just for you to, it's like clickbait. It's just there to get your attention to read the article. Yeah. And it's less about the truth, right? I agree with you. It sounds bad that someone did that and that happened. But in the same respect, some common sense should apply that you shouldn't put explosive things near hot stuff. Like, you wouldn't put your hairspray right on the stove next to a boiling pot of water, right? I'm sure that the hairspray probably says, don't put me near hot things.
Oh, but Alan, that's where I keep my hairspray, which I don't have.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
so, I don't know. I think common sense should apply at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a grumpy man in me.
Well, I finally did finish the hamster fitness tracker. I made a Fitbit for hamsters.
Yeah, I'm calling you the Hambit.
The Hambit. Well, it's pretty cool. I spent a lot of time working on it, and I finally finished the video for it and the article, which is very short, but I did finish all the documentation and everything's on GitHub. And you can find more about that on Polymatic.link/s, and it's the first actual article on our website. That's pretty cool. And I hope to do a lot more like stuff like this in the future.
And there's a video with that too, right?
Yeah, that's a video with that. That's basically the most important part of it. It shows you what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some drawings for that too.
So have you been keeping record? How far has your hamster gone before giving up?
Well, I found some bugs in the code.
Okay.
So what happened was I plug it in, and then it doesn't store the data. So I forgot to store the data. So every time I unplug it, the data is gone, which I'm gonna fix because there's like memory on the Arduino, so I can store that in there.
Is Hambit version 2 going to include Wi-Fi so that it goes to a server or Twitter?
No, actually, it's going to include Bluetooth because there's a Bluetooth chip on the Arduino, which will allow me to sync with my phone. So I might end up making a iOS and Android app for that to sync the hamster fitness at some point.
I'm telling you need a Hambit server so you could keep track of how often your hamster's using it.
You can make a public profile and stuff.
Yeah, like I'm telling you, attach it to Twitter.
I should make a Kickstarter out of this.
Yeah, and then you can tell when your hamster's running.
Yeah. And you can turn on lights and hook it up to if this then that.
Oh yeah, you could do that too. Yeah, that'd be pretty neat. So your lights would only stay on when your hamster is running.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be good. Anyway, so there's some interesting stuff we ran into.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things. For me, most of the stuff that I'll share is probably going to be mostly YouTube stuff, and definitely not different this week. So Tesla and Solar City are making solar roof tiles now, which is actually pretty neat. And I got 2 links for everybody. If you just want the brief, Polymatic.link/J. And if you want the longer 15-minute video where there's a discussion about it, Polymatic.link.K.
Okay.
Do you have a roof on where you live?
Well, there is a roof, but that's another person's house.
Gaia, so you got a condo. So you wouldn't likely, but if you were to build a house, would you put solar roof tiles on it?
No, I haven't really seen them yet. I've been so busy with work this week, I haven't really paid attention to any of the Tesla news. Well, normally I'd be like fanboying all over this stuff. Nope, I didn't notice it.
I think it's definitely it's a good idea. And if you dig around a little bit, I didn't dig too much, but the basic info is, first thing my stepbrother said to me is like, well, what about winter? What about snow? What about things that cover it up? And I go, they have heating elements in it, dude. They immediately will melt the snow. So what's the problem? And it's supposed to come in the price point, typically, at least in the U.S., as far as I understand, about the cost of what it takes to put a new roof on your house. So if you build this into the design of the house and you put the power walls in, you can run green just based on that alone.
Yeah, but that would only work for houses, not as much like, condos
Well, any
stuff.
place where you have a roof, right? So if you want to build a condo system that has a lot of roof area, I'm sure you're right. You're correct. That would not work for everybody, but there's nothing keeping them from putting solar arrays in the back of the building or something.
Yeah.
I wonder how that would apply if you try to, change sort of the tile format into window format and apply that across a building.
I have a new product, Alan. I have a new product. Solar bricks. They're bricks covered in solar panels.
Yeah, okay, that could be done.
That could
probably.
work.
Yeah, you get the same kind of classic material and make sure it's not opaque, and one side of it is the corners of it are heavy solar.
Yeah,
yeah, it's possible. Might be a good idea. I don't know.
Conductive cement.
Conductive cement. Well, that actually might not be too far off. You could probably do that. That's possible.
I should make an experiment out of that. Anyway, so this week, Filter, as an artist I follow, also made a new album, which came out. It's very good. I like it. Polymatic.link/o. That's all I have to say about it.
Okay. I won't say anymore. I don't know that I know the name Filter. I'll check it out, find out. Okay, what else? Oh, so I've been sharing unintentionally some like photography stuff here and there. And again, occasionally I come across a good video that really explains the point of something. If you do any kind of photography and you want to take yourself from being like an iPhone person to a DSLR, or you have a DSLR and you take pictures and they come out nice and you call yourself a photographer, but you don't understand what a lot of the settings do, I think occasionally I'm going to share some information about that. Like, for example, white balance. White balance is good to know what that means, how that works, how you apply that, how you calibrate things for video cameras, and even for photography. And so this is a pretty good video that kind of explains white balance and color temperature. And so it's polymatic.link/m. I don't know, I haven't really looked at my monitors lately, but even your monitors, your LCD monitors, have color temp controls, right? And when you hear someone talk about like a cinematographer, they really know how light exposure works, and they know color temperature, and they know what and how to do white balance. So if we go back to an older movie, and I feel bad for even saying this older movie, something like The Matrix, it's got a very green tone to it. Now, they color that in post-process. Or something like Pleasantville. That's the movie with Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon. You ever see that movie?
Nope.
It's a good movie, but one of the things it has is it plays heavily with color. And so they not only had to do a lot of post-processing to do that effect, but they also had to film things meant for black and white, or for color, or to bring the vibrance out. So there's a lot more than just taking a picture, but your color temperature and your color when you want to get really nice looking pictures without having to use Photoshop to do it. White balance has a lot to do with it, and the color temperature. So I would check that out if you're interested at all. At the very least, it's a pretty good example of showing you how color temperature works and why and how you white balance stuff.
As for the Matrix, they did the color thing. They did that on purpose.
Right, sure, that was intentional.
Inside the Matrix and outside of the Matrix.
Yeah, I mean, and that I think was definitely done in a post process. But if they were going for a certain color, typically those Matrix shots they would film right with a context of that is more toward that shade of green. They would white balance it, and all the lighting would be in reference to that. Otherwise, you would have hard contrast, hard mixes, and you don't want that. You want it to be fluid looking. So you would adjust your color temperature to be more pale green. You would go farther up on the color temperature, basically, and then they would probably put gels in too to give it a greener tone. So. and then they go and they fix it up and they make it. You can adjust in post processing, but on anything that deals with post processing is very time consuming and expensive. So normally, if you can film it that way, like Jurassic Park is filled, the original movie was filled mostly with physical models, and then they threw in 3D CG when necessary. And as they got later, they stopped doing that. There are less big models, it's mostly green screen stuff. And you can tell. You can definitely tell. So when you apply real world tricks versus post-process tricks, it does make a difference, even if it's subtle. So.
Okay, so I've been following this guy on YouTube for a while now. There is a guy who has a YouTube channel called Primitive Technology. You can find it at Polymatic.link/r. What this guy does is basically he builds stuff, but only with the tools he made himself. So he started with rocks, and he's now building kilns and traps for shrimp and other animals, and houses, huts, more like it, but he builds all sorts of stuff, and that's pretty cool, and all with all this old school ways of doing things. So if you ever want to survive in case of emergency, I think watching that YouTube channel might give you at least a little bit of an advantage.
This brings up a thought in my head as a kid that used to always throw me for a loop when my father said one day, they go, oh yeah, they use those old tools to build better tools. And that always kind of threw me off, right? How people use old tools to build newer tools, or we use our software that's older to build the next version. The next version just doesn't come out of nowhere. We take our old version and we use it to compile the new version, and then they sell you the new version. And so that was sort of like that, chicken before the egg kind of thing, or the egg before the chicken kind of thought. And
well, your language or your tool is complete when it can build itself, right?
Yeah. And so it's always neat to see, we often forget because of technology, the world was go boom and everything's a dystopia. Only very few people will be able to build computers from scratch. Very few people cook from scratch, right? They make their chicken soup. They started with a chicken stock, right? And pasta that was dry, and carrots that was farmed for them. And in 20 minutes, you have a chicken soup. Or salt that was pulled out of the ground, right? Or out of the sea, So, I'll have to check out this guy, but it's an interesting concept to apply.
Yeah, well, it's very entertaining.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess it's on me. I was chatting, sorry. So I found earlier this week, Google NASA is providing basically quantum computing. And there's a video on it that's kind of interesting. It's right on Google's site, Polymatic.link/n. Did you watch this? Did you check this out?
No, I have not checked it out yet.
Yeah. So I'm definitely not the expert on quantum computing. I know what the basics of it, and I've been following it here and there. I maybe on a really awesome thing, I will share a podcast that really talks about quantum computing in more depth, why that's important or why that's interesting at all. But it is interesting. It is sort of the next state of technology, quantum mechanics being sort of applied, and so it'll be interesting how they use this. So I don't know. I think we'll be able to process signaling much quicker. That definitely would be a good thing for NASA. So they're using, I think, a D-Wave computer. Is a brand I've heard of before, but not one I'm uniquely following. So, but again, Polymatic.link/n, as in Nancy, as in nougat.
Something related to this, I saw a post this morning about Google's AI doing an encryption between two two versions of the AI and then a third one trying to figure it out, and they made their own encryption, which is amazing. And here's Skynet. We're doomed.
Yeah. Well, this is part of that. I think this is part of the AI laboratories or whatever. But watch a video; it'll get you on a path if you're really curious. So,
also something different, but still awesome.
Still awesome, yeah.
The new Wonder Woman trailer came out. Polymatic.link/ is that a G or
Q.
a Q? It's a Q.
I think it's a Q, yeah. So, I watched a teaser trailer earlier, and I thought that was better than the official full trailer that I saw. But I'm still likely to go see it.
Well,
it looks good. I got to be honest, it looks good.
The best part of the whole Superman versus Batman movie was Wonder Woman. That part when she starts fighting, that's awesome. The rest of the movie, not so much.
Didn't care.
No, not really.
I didn't see that movie. I suppose I'll see it eventually, and I heard a lot of people complaining, but that wasn't the reason I saw it. It was kind of like how I felt about, what was it, the Predator versus Jason or something years ago. Was it the Predator Alien versus... no, it wasn't that. I was wrong. It was the Predator versus Alien.
Yeah.
That's what it was, remember? So I just look at that and I go, is there any really good, appropriate contribution that's being made here other than them trying to get you, to clickbait you, basically? They want your money. That's what they did. That's the reason they kind of shipped these two things together. And so...
Well, the difference is
that... technically, Batman and Superman are a part of the DC universe.
Yeah, they exist in the same universe, and they've been cooperating in their Justice League, I think. But it's
okay.
So there's a logical communication, but Versus is kind of weird. The whole thing with the Alien versus Predator is just to get them to be in the same universe, right? That's the only reason they did it. They just, put stuff together and make it canon.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I will eventually watch it. But it is far from priority as far as I'm concerned.
But Blade Runner, Alien, Predator, and there was another movie. They're all in the same universe.
The only crossover that I enjoyed recently was in the Supergirl TV series. I don't know. I think it might have been the end of the first season. But they basically crossed the Flash and Supergirl at the same time. And so there's a moment where the Flash is running and all of a sudden something flies out of the sky and he's like, oh, I think I went a lot farther than I realized. And there's a little joke in there. He's like, I'm the Flash. And she's like, who? and she's like, I'm Supergirl. And he's like, who? And so they're not part of the same universe, but anyhow, that crossover was kind of funny. I think it probably wasn't naturally written as canon, but it was kind of funny that happened. So that's the only kind of like crossover that I accepted because they sort of broke the ice in that funny, comedic way. So I don't know. I know I went off on tangent, but Wonder Woman, I'll definitely see it.
Yeah, you're gonna see it in cinema.
Yeah, if I'm lucky today, I'll see Doctor Strange.
Ooh,
you got to see it way before me.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Somehow they release in the European Union a lot faster than they do in the U.S. It's like a week at least.
Maybe it has something to do. A lot of times people don't realize they release things based on the timing of Oscars or award ceremonies.
Or to bump,
most of the time.
Or to bump it so people get really positive about it on the internet from Europe, and then they see, hey, well, maybe we should go see it because we've seen it. But I advise you to at least go see it and wait until there's like 2 extra scenes at the end. I only knew about one, and I left before I saw the second one. So stay till the end.
Okay, I will do that. I will make sure I stay to the end. And that's for Doctor Strange, of course, not Wonder Woman.
Well, we don't know anything about Wonder Woman besides the trailer.
Yeah, I'll have to dig up a link. Maybe we'll share it next week. There was a good fan trailer that was pretty good. There is a group called Team Unicorn, and that includes typically I think like half a dozen people that do some really awesome trailers or parodies every once in a while. And most of that group, I don't know if it was a Team Unicorn production, but most of that group put together a Wonder Woman trailer that was pretty awesome. And this was before there was any Wonder Woman trailers, official trailers, coming out. So I'll have to find that for you. Yeah.
No, that's pretty awesome. Okay, so Alan, where can they find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at Chase, my last name, Chaess, on Twitter. It's a good way of getting a hold of me. You can also find me over at ognetworks.tv. I'm on at least 2 of 4 podcasts that are over there. You can hear me if you want to hear me rant more. There's at least 2 shows for you to find.
The animes.
There. Yeah, if you guys want to hear us talk about anime and stuff and geek stuff, there's some overlap there.
Okay, you can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/webdevy, WEBDEVVIE. For feedback, you can contact podcast@Polymatic.media. Our Twitter is the Polymatic. Our website is Polymatic.media. Please review us on iTunes and Google Play. Please like or dislike our YouTube posts if you can. And I hope you tune in next time. The music in this episode was by Say Uns. It was licensed under Creative Commons Attribution and found on the Free Music Archive. You can find these tracks at shortner.com/PRK.